What's up, Fluffle Gang? Welcome back, and if you're new here, my name is Luffy, and welcome to my channel. Big Boss's life ended when he killed the boss in Metal Gear Solid 3. Beyond that moment, he lives a life trapped by the memes passed on to him by the boss. Seared into his mind are the ideas that soldiers are chained to the battlefield with their only reprieve coming in death, that there are no winners or losers in battle, only those who fell and the survivors, and that there can only be one boss and one snake. Big Boss blames political leaders for the boss's death, the times, and with this belief and the principles he took from the boss, he shapes his future. While you're here, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers, and when we hit that milestone, we'll do something special. Maybe stream Metal Gear Solid 2? Unfortunately, Big Boss really missed the mark when he interpreted the boss's will. Honestly, the speech the boss gives at the end of Metal Gear Solid 3 is so complicated that I don't blame BB for not getting it. He's probably so grief-stricken with having to face down his old mentor, all while trying to focus on the upcoming battle, that it would have been really hard to latch onto what she was saying. We, the player, have the rare opportunity to study the boss's speech, whereas Big Boss only heard it once. Did you understand the boss's speech the first time you heard it? I know I didn't. So I can't fault BB for misinterpreting her or missing key points. That said, let's dive into how the boss's speech affected BB over the years and how over time it was twisted up in his mind. Everything starts in Metal Gear Solid 3, so let's go over a quick summary of what kicks off one of the world's biggest war criminals' careers. The boss was Big Boss's, Naked Snake's, mentor, having taught him from the time he was 15 years old to 25 years old. During that time, she shaped his ideologies, and the two grew so close that they developed a form of close-quarters combat together. When the boss was called away for a mission when Big Boss was 25 years old, he felt abandoned by her, and counted the days to when he'd see her again. During the events of Metal Gear Solid 3, the boss was tasked with faux defecting to Volgan's unit in order to find the location of the Philosopher's legacy. Though after Volgan acted unpredictably and shot an American-made nuke at a Soviet research facility, Khrushchev demanded recompensation in the form of Volgan's assassination and the boss's life. Big Boss was tasked with achieving these goals and clearing America's name, which he successfully did. During the boss and Big Boss's final encounter, she imparted to him her goals and beliefs, though he didn't quite catch what she was throwing at him. As they face each other for the final time, the boss tells Big Boss,
"The foibles of politics and the march of time can turn friends into enemies just as easily as the wind changes." Ridiculous, isn't it?
This isn't the first time politics have pitted the boss against someone she cares about, as previously she'd had to kill the Sorrow, her lover and the father of her unborn child, to satisfy political demands. Big Boss internalizes the boss's struggle with the times and decides that to prevent any soldier from having to face their friend in battle, he'll fight the times themselves. In Peace Walker, Big Boss builds a private army and resolves to fight for no ideology, and over time this resolve twists into something darker. In Metal Gear 2, Big Boss goes so far as to tear through places himself, killing parents and kidnapping the orphans to turn into soldiers for his army. In a way, this prevents the kids from eventually being pitted against one another if BB's able to do this to an entire region. Friends are fighting alongside one another instead of against each other. Either way, they were going to be a victim of war, but he controls what kind of victim they are and, in his opinion, gives them a better outcome. The boss questions,
So then what is an enemy? Is there such a thing as an absolute timeless enemy? There is no such thing, and never has been. And the reason is that our enemies are human beings like us. They can only be our enemies in relative terms.
Big Boss comes to understand that there is no such thing as an absolute timeless enemy, and that even the seemingly unchangeable ideologies that drive conflict change with the flow of time. In Peace Walker, Big Boss is sucked into a conflict that he admits made him interfere with the times. He says,
"We're an army without a flag. We weren't supposed to take sides in international affairs, but we did."
Big Boss taking sides in Peace Walker's conflict put his private army on the map and grew MSF into something that he could use to shape the narrative. He shapes who the enemy is. He makes orphans and kidnaps them for his private army. He unites them under his flag and pits them against whatever he determines the times to be. The times are an idea, and not even a concrete one, so Big Boss determining what the times are is him just determining who his enemy is at the time. Something else the boss says,
Enemies change along with the times, the flow of the ages, and we soldiers are forced to play along. I didn't raise you and shape you into the man you are today just so we could face each other in battle. A soldier's skills aren't meant to be used to hurt friends.
Kazuhiro Miller, BB's EXO and close friend, uses his skills to hurt Big Boss over the course of the game. Sure, he builds MSF up, but he betrays BB in the process as he knows about Cypher and Paz before their big reveal. I wonder if this is part of why BB throws him away after this. He no longer considers him a friend by the boss's definition. The boss also tells BB,
I raised you. I loved you. I've given you weapons, taught you techniques, endowed you with knowledge. There is nothing more for me to give you. All that's left for you to take is my life, by your own hand. One must die, and one must live. No victory, no defeat. The survivor will carry on the fight. It is our destiny. The one who survives will inherit the title of boss. And the one who inherits the title of boss will face an existence of endless battle.
This was seared into BB's mind. Being trapped as a soldier within an endless fight where death is the only release is a recurring thought that comes up with BB, such as how BB lives his life. I'd like to see what kind of person BB would have been had he not latched onto this warped perception of the boss's ideals, but he started working with the boss when he was 15. She helped shape who he'd be as an adult, so there was no chance BB was ever going to think on his own or try to carve his own ideals. In BB's mind, soldiers have no option other than to fight, and he creates a nation for soldiers with no other marketable skills and nowhere else to go. BB tells Solid Snake that the only peace he'll find is when he's dead and when he's no longer fighting for BB. BB promises to give Snaved that peace by killing him. In Metal Gear 2, BB tells Snaved, "It doesn't matter who wins here. Our fight will continue. The loser will be liberated from the battlefield and the winner will remain. And the survivor will live out the rest of his days as a soldier." Interesting, he denotes the winner as the survivor. He was the survivor in his final encounter with the boss, and the boss says the survivor will carry on the fight. Snaved pushes back against this mentality though, saying, "It doesn't have to be that way. I'm not like you. I love life," implying that BB doesn't love life or the way he's living. I thought up until this point that BB was backing himself up and his ideologies, but maybe he's more trapped by the memes the boss passed on to him than he is willingly upholding them. Maybe this is the only way he can see to keep her with him, and BB's trying to fight the times and provide a haven for soldiers is his way of not letting the boss go. Letting the boss go would mean he'd need to think for himself and maybe take some responsibility for the boss's death. Not that I think BB should blame himself for it, but BB holding onto the boss's beliefs so hard and making his entire life about them is clearly some kind of grief response. BB doesn't even deny that he doesn't love life. He accepts Snaved's statement and tells him, "Very well, Snake, I'll release you from your suffering. As your former commander, I'll do you one last favor and put you out of your misery." He seems to believe that if Snaved doesn't hold the same views as him, that a soldier is only truly alive and thriving on the battlefield, then the only alternative is to put him out of his misery and kill him so that he doesn't have to keep fighting. Snaved throws BB's words back in his face. "Never give up. Fight until the end. Always believe you will succeed, even when the odds are against you. Those are your words." This BB pushes back on, saying, "Even I make mistakes from time to time." Was that something BB just said to soldiers, or was this something he believed, but felt the odds were too great this time for Snaved to overcome? Snaved has no weapons and is up against a legend. How miserable was BB? By MG2. By Peace Walker, BB says,
10 years ago, the Times rejected the boss and killed her. And now, we're the ones being tested. Will the Times erase us? Or work with us? It's gonna be a lonely battle. No good or evil. No winners or losers.
BB echoes the boss's sentiment that there are no winners or losers in this battle, and probably thinks of things in terms of survivors. If he survives, he'll keep fighting, and if he doesn't, then he's freed from the battlefield. In MGS4, when BB is 79, he does a complete 180 and tells a despondent Snaved,
"Don't waste the life you have left fighting."
which is rich coming from BB. He spends MG2 telling Snaved he has no choice but to fight, and that's the only time Snaved, according to BB, truly feels alive and satisfied. But now he's doing a 180 and talking about how he didn't believe most of his life that soldiers were trapped to the battlefield until they die. BB goes on to say,
"That new world is yours to live in. Not as a snake, but as a man."
BB is once again trying to relieve Snaved from the battlefield, just in a new way from MG2. It's condescending to think BB thinks he has any right to relieve Snaved of anything. He's not actually his father, or his brother, and though he was his commander once, that was a long time ago. Snaved fought to be the man he is today, and BB shouldn't presume to think he still has the same influence over him that he does in MG2, or that Snaved needs his permission to stop fighting. He and Otacon built philanthropy together. If they want to stop fighting, that's something they can decide together, without BB's influence. BB also talks about his endeavors up until that point, saying,
"It's almost time for me to go. And with me, the last ember of this fruitless war dies out. And at last, those old evils will be gone.
Is BB talking about the war economy, or his and Zero's desire to carry on the boss's will which brought the world to the brink of destruction? Or both? BB understands at the end that the efforts he and Zero put forth to realize the boss's will was fruitless. At least that's something. BB also comments,
Ever since the day I killed the boss with my own hands, I was already dead.
What a miserable thing to admit. His whole life, BB has considered himself dead already. BB carried his grief over the boss's death with him for the rest of his life, and it shows. He fights the times in a vain attempt to prevent any soldier, most of all himself, from ever having to face someone they care about on the battlefield. This idea warps into him killing parents in war-torn areas and kidnapping their kids because at least united under his flag, they won't need to face one another when they're inevitably sucked into the war in their region. As he himself is a soldier that can't find peace, he feels all soldiers are only really satisfied by battle, and so he creates a nation of warriors where soldiers can fight endlessly. There are no victors in battle, only survivors to carry on the fight. BB is miserable, and it isn't until the very end of his life that he sees the folly of his endeavors. It makes me wonder what kind of big boss we would have seen if he, and honestly Zero, got grief canceling after the boss's death. And there we have it. That's what we have for analyzing all of BB's different speeches. And the boss's speech, I don't know, I've been looking a lot at these speeches lately, and it's been really, really interesting to see the overlap that happens between all of these different, ideologies and speeches, including all the way back to Metal Gear 2, which came out in the 80s. It's really, really great stuff. So I really hope you found this video interesting. Thank you very much for making it to the end. Please, like I said, subscribe. We're almost to 1,000 subscribers. How awesome is that? More importantly, please take care of yourselves. I will catch you all in the next one. Thank you.